Good afternoon. Beijing, July 24th, 2025. On the surface, it was a diplomatic milestone, 50 years since the European Union and China established official ties. But behind the commemorative handshakes and staged photo-ops, the 25 EU-China summit revealed a relationship under severe strain. Trade tensions have escalated into retaliatory tariffs. Strategic distrust runs deep, from Ukraine to rare earths to electric vehicles, and though both sides spoke of mutual respect and cooperation, the summit's one-day duration at China's request was itself a telling symbol of lowered expectations. What does this shortened summit say about the future of EU-China relations? Can two economic powerhouses find common ground in a world of shifting alliances and multiplying pressures? Welcome to In Depth. The 25th EU-China summit taking place in Beijing on July 24, 2025 marks 50 years of diplomatic relations but highlights rising tensions and frustrations for the European Union. According to Le Monde, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated that China-EU relations have reached an inflection point, emphasizing the urgent need to rebalance trade ties amid a record €300 billion EU trade deficit with China. Discussions focused on addressing trade imbalances, China's industrial overcapacity, and China's continued support for Russia amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict. While the talks were tensed and shortened to one day at China's request, von der Leyen and Chinese President Xi Jinping had a candid but constructive dialogue. Both sides expressed a willingness to explore solutions, particularly around trade and climate cooperation, though significant differences remain. Right, welcome back. And to help us decode what happened in Beijing and what is its signals for the months ahead, we're joined now by Mr. Benny Kwok, international political analyst based in Hong Kong, who brings us a China-focused view on trade dynamics and Beijing's strategic calculus. And from Paris, Mr. Meher Nicholas Fazeli, Director of the EU Asian Center, offers the European lens on strategic autonomy, multilateralism, and Europe's positioning amid US-China rivalry. Let me start here with Mr. Kwok. And how would you characterize the tone and body language of this summit from the Chinese point of view?
For inviting me. So before the summit, I guess many of the analysts and the observers would not put very high expectations between the EU and China because they have very sharp different expectations on each other. For example, like the trade disputes, and also the Russia, the China-Russia relations. So now we're seeing this summit is just cut from the 2-day summit to 1-day summit, and each of the sides is saying their own words, and we are seeing no so-called the constructive any agreement. Just have the agreement about the very vague agreement about the climate change, but for the other aspects, such as the trade affairs and also the whether China supporting Russia in the Ukrainian war, we're seeing there is no so-called agreement. So that's why I would say for this EU-China summit, there is not much constructive things we can see, but at least I would say at least both sides would like to recognize, okay, they have the differences, and both sides are willing to put more time to trying to looking for solutions and try to diminish the gap.
Mm. So you're speaking here about the trade and geopolitical differences that exist and needs to be seen. Let me here go to Mr. Fazeli, and Ursula von der Leyen described EU-China ties as being at an inflection point. Now, what does this reflect politically, or what does this terminology means politically?
I'm delighted to join you today live from Paris. First, a short disclaimer. Everything I'm going to say with you today is a reflection of my personal opinion, which will allow me more freedom to give you my personal views. So I think that, sadly, that 3 days trip to Tokyo and Beijing was a big failure. It was a big failure, not because of the Japanese or the Chinese, but it was a big failure because Ursula von der Leyen, specifically, because, to be honest, when she says it's an inflection, it is not true. So it is not an inflection. And why is it not an inflection? For a very simple reason. The Chinese government, the ruling body, the elite ruling in Beijing, which is called the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party, the elite of the elite, right? So the elite of the Chinese government, they're ultra-realists. They are not moved by Marxist or communist ideas. They couldn't care less. They're extremely pragmatic, which is great. And when President Trump entered the White House 7 months ago, he moved away from the silly, ideologically driven, neoconservative, neoliberal ideas, and he also shifted on a very real,
Mr. Fazeli, allow me to go live into a statement that would be delivered by U.S. President Donald Trump to reporters, mainly on Gaza, before heading to Scotland for a 5-day visit.
Well, the Gaza situation, and I said this was going to happen when you get down to your last 10 or 20. We got a lot of hostages out. We took them out in numbers that nobody believed, a lot of them. And I said, when you get down to 10 or 20, I don't think Hamas is going to make a deal, because that means they have no protection. And basically, that's what happened. Hamas didn't want to make a deal.
Have you seen that photo?
I think what's going to happen is they're going to be hunted down.
Secondary sanctions sooner on Russia. Are you closer today to secondary sanctions?
We're looking at that whole situation. It could be that we'll have to put secondary sanctions on them.
Sooner than 50 days?
Maybe, yeah.
Do you think it will counterproductive? What could be counterproductive?
Who are you with? Who are you with?
Qnews.
Oh, good.
Counterproductive to France, for France to say that they would recognize the Palestinian state. Macron said that yesterday.
Look, he's a different kind of a guy. He's okay. He's a team player, pretty much. But here's the good news. What he says doesn't matter. It's not going to change it. Well, he made a statement, France, Macron. His statement doesn't carry any weight. He's a very good guy. I like him. But That statement doesn't carry weight.
How important is a trade deal with the EU?
I would say that we have a 50-50 chance, maybe less than that, but a 50-50 chance of making a deal with the EU. And it'll be a deal where they have to buy down their tariffs, because they're right now at 30%. And they'll have to buy them down, maybe, or they could leave them the way they are. But they want to make a deal very badly. I would have said we have a 25% chance with Japan, and they kept coming back, and we made a deal, and the deal is, don't forget, Japan's putting up $550 billion. It's a lot of money. And also paying tariffs. The biggest part of the Japan deal, and maybe we get this with EU, maybe we don't, is that we have the right to go in and trade. We have the right. They've totally opened Japan to just to the U.S. That's, to me, the biggest part of the deal.
What level of tariff are you looking
Nuclear
for?
disarmament. You said repeatedly you would like to see further nuclear arms reductions between the United States
I
and
would like
Russia.
to see that.
But the new START treaty is expiring in about 6 months, and it cannot be legally extended.
That's a problem. That's a problem for the world.
Create a new one.
It's a problem for the world. You know, we have restrictions, and they have restrictions, as you know, on nuclear. That's not an agreement you want expiring. We're starting to work on that, but that is a big problem for the world. When you take off nuclear restrictions, that's a big problem for the world.
What level of tariff do you want? Mr. President.
I think that Jerome Powell, I think we had a very good meeting. Forgetting about the building, that's out of control and all that. But I think we had a very good meeting on interest rates. And he said to me, now I don't know if he's going to say this on Thursday or whenever he speaks, but he said to me very strongly, the country is doing well. He said, congratulations, the country is doing really well. And I got that to mean that I think he's going to start recommending lower rates.
Because of that
How do you
conversation,
think that the Supreme
The
Court...
country really is doing well, too.
Mr. President, how do you think that...
Record business.
did you speak to
Wait one second.
Netanyahu?
Thank you, Mr. President. How do you think that the Supreme Court's ruling that benefited you on presidential immunity would apply to former President Barack Obama and what you're accusing him of doing?
It probably helps him a lot. Probably helps him a lot, the immunity ruling. But it doesn't help the people around him at all. But it probably helps him a lot. Well, he's done criminal acts, there's no question about it. But he has immunity, and it probably helps him a lot.
A trade agreement you're looking to sign
He
too.
owes me big. Obama owes me big.
What are the details in the UK trade agreement you're hoping to sign soon with the Prime Minister
This
this week?
week we want to talk about certain aspects which is going to be good for both countries. More fine-tuning, and also we're going to do a little celebrating together because, you know, we got along very well. UK's been trying to make a deal with us for like 12 years and haven't been able to do it. We got it done. He's doing a very good job, good Prime Minister, good guy. We really get along very well. So we're going to meet at Turnberry and we're going to meet at Aberdeen. So two beautiful places.
Is there wiggle room in steel and aluminum if they were to budge on digital services tax?
Say it.
Is there any wiggle room on steel and aluminum in exchange for any budge on digital services?
Not a lot, because if I do it for one, I have to do it for all. So on that, steel and aluminum, not a lot.
President, did you speak to Netanyahu about aid drops?
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. President, did you speak to Netanyahu about allowing aid drops from Gaza from Arab countries?
Yeah, I speak to him, but I can't tell you what I spoke to him about. But it was sort of disappointing, although I told you. I mean, I told you, when you get down to those last 20 hostages, you get down to that last 10 or 20, it's going to be very hard for Hamas to make a deal because they lose their shield, they lose their cover. We got a lot of them out, a lot of them. We took a lot of bodies out, too. You know, so many of the parents said, please get my son's body back. And we're able to do that. We got a lot of people out, live and people that are not alive. But it was very important to the parents to get their son back, even though they knew their son was dead.
Are you going to be able to get the Open Championship back to Turnberry?
I think they will do that, yeah. They want Turnberry is rated the #1 course in the world. I think they'll do that, yeah.
And are you going to talk to anybody
No,
about
I'm not
that
going
over
to.
there?
It's not about that. I'm going to see it for the first time in years. You were there the last time we went. That's pretty good, right? No, it's the best resort in the world, I think. And Turnberry, and it's one of the greatest courses in the world. We're going to see it. We're going to have, I believe, dinner at Turnberry with the Prime Minister. Then we're going to go to the oil capital of Europe, which is Aberdeen, and we're going to have lunches there. We're going to have a good time. I think the Prime Minister and I get along very well.
And you're going to see the Scottish leader too, right? John
I am.
What's that about?
Well, we have a lot of things in Scotland. I have a lot of love. My brother was born in Scotland, and he's a good man. The Scottish leader's a good man, so I look forward to meeting him. That's all set up, right?
Paris Day is exactly 1 week from today, August the 1st. What do you expect between now and next Friday as it relates to your deadline?
When you say tariff, not Paris.
Paris.
Paris. I think you said Paris Day.
No, Paris Day.
Well, most of the deals are finished right now. They're finished because we're just going to charge a certain tariff. A lower tariff that I could get. I don't want to hurt countries. But we're going to send a letter out sometime during the week, and it's basically going to say you're going to pay 10%, you're going to pay 15%, you're going to pay maybe less, I don't know. But Australia was great. They opened up beef yesterday for the first time ever. And they did it. We didn't know about it. We asked them to do it, and all of a sudden we got a word that they wanted. So obviously they're looking to do something. But Australia. So August 1st is going to come, and we will have most of our deals finished, if not all. We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariff, not really a negotiation. We're working very diligently with Europe, the EU, which covers a lot of territory, a lot of countries, and that's the big one right now. We have the confines of a deal with China, but we haven't really. We don't have a deal with Canada. We haven't been focused on it.
When you send out those letters, Mr. President, when you send out those letters, you believe that will bring some certainty to the financial markets, because then they will know.
No, when those letters go out, they're a page and a half. That means they have a deal, it's done, they pay that tariff, and that is a contract essentially. And they can come into the country, they're going to pay a tariff. I'm going to keep it minimal, I'm going to keep it, I'm not looking to hurt countries. I could do that too, but I'm not looking to do that. But when that letter goes out, that's a deal. And we'll be sending maybe close to 200 of those letters out. Don't forget, we have a lot of countries. So we're going to be sending out almost 200 of those letters. But once those letters go out, there we have a deal. Now, we sent one to Japan, we sent one to EU, and they came back and negotiated a deal. I think EU has got a pretty good chance of making a deal.
With all of that revenue coming in, Mr. President.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
Our country was a dead country. It was a dead country 1 year ago. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. And don't you feel it?
Mr. President, with all of that revenue coming in, tens and tens of billions of dollars, do you think there is the possibility of a rebate to the American public in terms of all of that money?
We're thinking about that, actually. We have so much money coming in, we're thinking about a little rebate, but the big thing we want to do is pay down debt. But we're thinking about a rebate. That's a very good question. We're thinking about a rebate because we have so much money coming in from tariffs that a little rebate for people of a certain income level might be very nice.
That was a brief press conference from US President Donald Trump before he leaves to Scotland, where he addressed a number of issues and files, starting with the Gaza file and the ceasefire negotiations, where he showed his pessimism vision towards the developments, and said that the U.S. has pulled out from the negotiations so far, and spoke about also the Hamas position and obstructing the deal. He also went on to speak about Macron's position, or the French position, towards the Palestinian cause, moving on to some of the international discussions of the EU and China relations, and the tariffs differences between the US and China and the EU. He also moved on to speak about Russia and Ukraine, and he spoke about his trip to Scotland, where he is supposed to be meeting the Scottish president, and where they will be tackling a number of issues. A brief press conference that definitely spoke about internal and worldwide issues, including also the position of the US 1 year ago and nowadays, and the status of the United States. Right, back to our episode, and back to Mr. Fazili. And the question was the terminology of von der Leyen, who described the EU-China ties as being at an inflection point. Mr. Fazili, please continue.
Yes, indeed, and it's largely fiction, not inflection. So inflection is like flexible, right? Flexible, it's a French word, which means to bend a piece of metal, right? It's an Anglo-Norman French word.
So politically, what does this mean?
It's the opposite of what Ursula von der Leyen is doing, because she's not flexible. She is not inflecting. Why? To make a long story short, 35 years ago when the Berlin Wall fell and the Americans invaded Iraq, a new thinking dominated the world for 35 years. It's called neoconservatism. Bush, Cheney, Clinton, they ruled the world until February of 2025. And when President Trump entered the White House 7 months ago, he completely eliminated that neoconservative thinking in America. And the only part of the world where we still have neoconservatives is Europe. It's people like Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa that are clinging desperately to the old model, which is the complete opposite of what? Of neorealism. So the Chinese government is a realistic, pragmatic government, just like Trump. They may not like each other, they're rivals, but they believe in the same set of principles. The Europeans are desperately trying to keep the old world alive, but the old world is dying. What am I saying here? Because she's not flexible. There's no inflection. She went to China. Why did she go to China now? Because on August 1st, in precisely 7 days, Trump has threatened to slap a 15-20% aggressive import tax duty on all European products and services. So the Europeans are panicking, and so they're going, Antonio Costa and Ursula von der Leyen, they're going to Beijing to send a signal to Trump. If you pressure us, if you put aggressive, blah, 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 import duties on us in 1 week, we will do business with China, which makes sense. It's an alternative, right? If you have a threat, you need a recourse, an alternative. And the only possible alternative they have is China. But when they went to China, what did they have to offer to the Chinese? Absolutely nothing. The Chinese want to invest in advanced microchip foundries. The most important tech sector in the world now is advanced microchip foundries. NVIDIA, one American company, the market cap of NVIDIA is now bigger than all English, French, German, European companies put together. It's amazing. And so there is in Europe one competitor to NVIDIA called ASML. It's a French, Dutch, Italian microchip foundry. And the Chinese said, we would like to invest in ASML and to exchange, engineers and money and capital to help ASML, that European company, compete with NVIDIA. And the Europeans said, no, we don't want to sell advanced microchips to the Chinese. It is really silly. It is stupid. It's a recipe for disaster and failure.
Right. Mr. Kwok, why did China request that the summit be shortened to just a one day? And what message did that send?
First, I guess both sides didn't have much expectations for this summit because each of the side has known they have a very large differences on the opinions on the no matter the trade and no matter the Russian position in the Ukrainian war, and I would expect China is trying to trying to pushing the Europe on the corner, that is forcing the Europe to open the market. But of course, EU is also I would say just buying the time and see whether China would like to open the market or China would like to, for example, try to giving some of the advantage for the European Union. For example, trying to cut the EV cars that exporting to Europe, or maybe they're trying to cut the so-called small parcels, the EU. I would say when we look at the EU-China summit, we have to put the United States in as focus as well, because now you're seeing the United States, EU, and China, these trilateral blocks, they are interacting with each other. So now when we're seeing the United States is having the tariffs on the EU, or even though it is just a 15% tariff, and now the United States is also having a very much higher tariff on China, just like now at 55% at this moment, and which, of course, EU and China, they need each other so that they try to bypass the EU tariff and try to press the US to try to concede. But now
but here, Mr. Kwok, let me ask you specifically, shortening the whole summit to a one day, did that send a kind of message of we already have our points here, so what are we speaking about? We don't have to lose time. These are our points. Okay. And what message did that send?
So the message is very clear. That is, both sides doesn't have any expectations for this summit. Mm-hmm. Both sides just want to say that they just claim the stance, mm-hmm. and that's all. They won't expect they have a very constructive agreement for this summit, and it would take time. It would whether the coming summit they will have a non-agreement, we don't know. But at least for this time, they have no expectations for this summit. Right. So rather than just wasting their time, just cut short to have just one-day meeting.
Right, Mr. Fazeli, what are the EU's biggest trade grievances with China right now, and are they shared by all member states?
The short answer is no. They are not shared by all member states. You know, most CEOs, the CEOs of the biggest companies, industrial companies in Italy, France, Austria, Holland, they would like to do more business with China. If you talk to the chief executive officers of the largest European companies in banks, it's political. And why is it political? Because once again, they refuse to see reality. What is geoeconomics? The new world, the new era in which we live today. Geoeconomics means that the old separation where you had on the one hand the world of trade, industry, finance, commerce, and on the other hand the world of national security and military affairs, the wall separating them collapsed because President Trump 6 months ago completely destroyed that separation. And so we entered a new era, the age of geoeconomics, where everything is weaponized. Weaponized, what does it mean? Investment, finance, trade, commerce are used now as geopolitical weapons. That is the meaning of geoeconomics.
So you think here that China, when it shortened to a one-day summit, it meant that it wants better to deal with member states all on his own instead of dealing with the EU as a bloc?
Yes, And it also means that the Chinese leadership prefers to deal with Trump. Trump is their rival, but he's not their enemy. What they may do in the coming years is partition the world into spheres of influence. At least Trump speaks the same language as the leadership of the Chinese Politburo. They are both realists, so they can talk to each other in a cynical, realist way. The Europeans, what did Ursula von der Leyen say to the Chinese? For most of the time, she wasted the time of the Chinese leaders by focusing on climate finance and climate change. You don't travel 8,000 kilometers to Beijing when there is a trade war brewing between you, the EU, and Washington to lecture the Chinese on climate finance and global warming. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Kwok, Beijing
Yes.
insists the EU should properly handle friction. What exactly does China mean by that?
Of course, now Beijing would think it is the EU to put the tariff on the electronic vehicles. It is the responsibility of the EU to put on any trade restrictions on Chinese medical appliances in the European market. This is the reason why Xi Jinping and other Beijing officials have such stance. And of course, even though the words are quite strong from Beijing, but you are seeing China doesn't want to break the relations with the EU because China knows EU is very important, not really the partner, but EU is a really important, I would say, counterpart to try to counterbalance as trade pressures and trade disputes with the United States. And China needs EU, not just the market, and also they need the EU to try to alleviate the pressure from the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was Mr. Benny Kwok and Mr. Meher Nicholas Fazeli. We thank you both for your insights and perspectives here. And I guess that concludes today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.